Hi, and welcome to the Gamemode Creative podcast. We're back with another episode. And in case this is your first time, or maybe even if this isn't your first time and you just need a refresher on who we are, well, I'm Rainboom, first off. And if you're wondering who else might be around, I have my Minecraft colleague, Meg. I can't think of the right term. You had a much better term last episode.
Or you could just say co-host.
Co-host, yes. See, I'm already starting to overcomplicate this just as we speak. But maybe to kick things off, how have you been since the last episode, Meg?
Oh, I can't even remember how long it's been since we recorded the last episode. It has been a few weeks, hasn't it?
Feels like eons.
Feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
But I've just kind of been busy working on the same project since then. I feel like I've been working on the same things for the past month. That's what it feels like.
Oh, that's fair. At least you've got your mind on something, though, which is not too bad.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
That's pretty good. Like me, on the contrary, though, when I'm working on one thing and I run out of ideas, then I feel like I'd be unproductive if I don't do something else. So me, on the contrary, I've been doing a whole bunch of things, I think, over this past little while.
Well, I do have several things I work on at once. It's just because like that, I can't work on one thing all the time. I do go back and forth between different projects. Yeah. Which is kind of similar to the topic that we're going to be discussing.
Pretty much. Yeah, like for me, because I've been bouncing back and forth between, mm-hmm. You've seen me work on different elements of my city project, right? So it's like different streams sometimes, or different days I'll try something. And honestly, it is because, there's a mix of a lack of preparation for one. I'll openly admit that. You'll know when I'm not prepared when you see me trying to stall and try to figure out what to do for the next 2-3 hours of whatever time I'll have streaming, or it's just, I don't have any inspiration or motivation. So I think that, even as you alluded, is practically what we're going to talk about today. But I kind of want to spin it a different way first off, and kind of talk about it through the lens of burnout, because I know that is very, very possible, not just in your everyday life with anything. Like, I know I have some personal examples I could totally rant about today, but even with creative work, the creative process, I know even that, honestly, I've had some projects that I've just gotten sick of because I've been spending too much time on them and not really getting any inspiration, or whatever the case is. But when was the last time, if you have, Meg, in your case, had to deal with burnout? If you aren't currently experiencing it, I think.
Well, see, for me with burnout, it's weird because I never fully stop doing something unless the only time I ever fully stop doing something is if just life circumstances happen or something happens that prevents me from doing it. But usually when I'm experiencing quote unquote burnout, for me, I'm actually still doing my regular thing, but maybe just at a much slower pace, just because I don't feel as motivated to work on it.
I see, but you're not somebody who, let's say, would you'd intentionally decide to do something else, like, oh, let's say we'll do a different project.
I do sometimes, if I need a break from Minecraft, I might play other games, but that's not necessarily because of burnout. It could just be a brain break. Like, I'll always go back to doing my regular thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do take breaks. I take a lot of breaks usually when I'm feeling burnt out, but I don't ever stop completely, because I know that if I do stop completely, I won't be able to pick it up again as easily.
So then, in that case, to what extent to you would it be so that when you're feeling it actually, at what point, let me rephrase this properly, at what point for you does it become burnout versus simply just, wanting to try to do something else just to get your mind off of, like, taking a break?
That's hard because I don't know. I'm trying to differentiate between burnout and motivation then.
Or even builder's block or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know, because usually when I'm just super demotivated to work on something, I'm feeling very burnt out. I know that was the case with that last build I did, the Samson one. That took probably twice as long as it should have, just because I did not have the motivation to work on it at all. And I was being super picky with it, and I just didn't care about it. And I was just going super slow in the building process until finally I reached a point where I'm like, you know what, it's done enough, and then I could put it all behind me. But I can't make myself stop. I have to see it to the end, no matter how frustrating it is.
I see. So you just kind of chug along with it and continue through, kind of just bear through it.
I like force myself to finish what I start, and it's awful sometimes.
But hey, at least you do get it done, though. There is something. I usually try to think the same myself, but my biggest concern is if I don't know what I'm doing, like let's say if I'm lacking in inspiration or even just what I'm going to do, like there's no plan that I have, then what point is there for me to continue chugging for it if I'm not even going to actually do anything as a result of that? So that's kind of where I've been struggling, because at that point I'll say, why am I going to use up my time just flying around or just going in circles, not being able to get anywhere, when I could just, kind of take my mind off of it and then maybe get a breather in between or something. And then maybe at some point in the future, it might come back to me. So I've really wondered how you've been able to do that, just like to be able to really just, despite the lack of whether it's inspiration or ideas, that you're still able to continue through with something.
Well, I think a lot of it is because I have way too many ideas, and I'm like, well, I'm not allowed to start another project until I finish this one. And I kind of get into that mindset where I'm not allowed to start all of my ideas until I finish what I'm already working on, because otherwise I would never get anything done, because there's always new ideas popping up in my head, always.
I see. So I guess then when I think about it, it might be that because as you know, I'm probably more or less the opposite, where I kind of act on ideas where something pops in mind. I say, I better jot this down or execute it before I forget it. So I don't know. Maybe
my problem is I just have too many. It's impossible for me to get to them all.
Because I don't know if that maybe borders on just going by impulse and like kind of me going in the moment, but relying too much on being in the moment and forgetting about the long term, about, will I actually be able to finish this? And so sometimes that's what happens to me with all the open projects I have. Now, my rationale, and sometimes I say it to myself, you know what, if I run out of a motivation for one thing, I can hop onto the other one. But then sometimes in the back of my mind, I get worried about this. What happens if all these things I have, all these projects, just I run out of motivation or inspiration? Have I backed myself into a dead end? And then at that point, I'm like, what am I going to do? Do I just kind of step away from it all and take a break and try to...
Have you ever reached that point, you think?
I would say that I have come pretty close, because I've just been tempted to say, I have that feeling I want to get on the project to do something, but I just don't know what. And I don't simply just want to fly around and look around, because more and more things are going to show up. And then I look at it, let's say I'll look at one house in a neighborhood and say, oh, I'd like to go finish off this interior. But then I fly over to like the next door office complex. I'll say, oh, wait, I have this thing to finish too. So I don't know if it's a bunch of ideas per se. It's just, I feel like maybe I put myself into a place where there's so many tasks. Maybe I've overwhelmed myself now that I think about it.
Maybe you just need to work more like I do, more structured, where you finish the one building first before even thinking about starting the next one. I know that's hard, but that's probably what you need to do.
No, that's true. And that might be something, and I've slowly been kind of trying to really think about, okay, I guess less about what I'm feeling like in the moment, where I know it's just going to be just for that moment. And then when that spark is lost, then I'll be lost anyway. But kind of bringing it more towards, like if I don't know if it's long-term planning on a specific build or anything like that, but just I'm trying to think of how I could best restructure my thinking in that way. So
do you have are we just talking about working on like that one specific world that you build in, or like, for example, when I get burnt out on one project, I always have like other different kinds of projects I can fall back to.
I see.
So if I get tired of doing survival this day, I know that I can always work on a creative project or some other art project instead. So depending on what I feel like doing that day, I always have something I can work on, but I might not be working on the same thing every day, just because I might not always feel up to it.
See, because in my case, like I know that all of the sub-project, or technically all the projects I have, they all fall under the same one creative world. They're just in different places in the city. And they're all completely different types of building, whether it's, I have to build exteriors or interiors, maybe an entire new building to have to plan out, or kind of zoning. So it's funny, because it almost feels like I'm kind of learning how to actually operate and run a city practically, which is really weird to think about, because, I'm just trying to build it. I'm not actually going to run this city, but yet I still have that mindset. But as you probably know, I do have other things or projects or, places that I spend my time on. So sometimes I'll stream up a survival set, especially if my siblings are on, and maybe that'll help to, get my mind off it. But even there, it's funny too, because the list of possible things to do never ends, because I could just explore it, play it as it is, or I could maybe try a building project in survival if I wanted to, and stuff like that. So I guess it could also just be the fact that there's so much to think about that my mind gets cluttered and I'm kind of overwhelmed thinking, wow, there's so much I could do, but what should I do? It's like just a lack of structuring, I guess, is what
that sounds like me
encountering.
trying to prioritize my ideas and projects. I used to write them all down, and I don't anymore just because there's too many. I just don't even bother anymore.
Yeah, I guess I feel like it would be overwhelming, wouldn't it? Just looking and saying, wow, this almost feels like a to-do list, and this is never going to end or something.
I used to have one of those, though. Like when I first started YouTube, I still have a spreadsheet of all of my building ideas. And of course, most of them I'm probably never going to do now because I have too many other new ideas that just don't add to the list.
So then, and then if you were to do it, you'll just see this list is just getting longer and longer as we speak. And it's like you'll have...
I just don't even worry about it anymore. And now I focus on whatever project stands out in my mind at any given time. That's the one I end up working on.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I know, though, now going back to when you asked about when I had, have I ever come close to practically, just saying I've hit that dead end of lacking motivation. Sometimes in those moments, though, I've had this feeling in the back of my mind where I kind of feel like, you know what, let me just kind of revel in this emotion for a bit and kind of sit there, put myself away, especially if it's a really severe case of, let's say, builder's block or something like that, where I'll just really step aside and say, yeah, maybe I just need to just sit out of this for a bit, do something else or whatever it is. But I kind of enjoy it to the point where I don't want to quite go back to whatever it is I have in mind, even though I have ideas for it and they start to come back. But I'll say, I think I've really just gotten sick of this. I don't want to come back to it anyway. Otherwise, I might kind of fall into the same trap of just losing that inspiration. So in these kinds of cases, is it like I really don't know if it's mentally healthy to think of it that way, where I can just kind of sit and not really indulge in, obviously not, but kind of just sit in this sort of, it's really hard to put into words, but I could say like just entertaining thoughts about just pulling myself away for a bit. And even though I feel like I want to jump back in, I'll say, nope, I just need to take like a vacation from this completely and just spend some time away.
Well, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone else, but from what I've observed, I think that is what some people do need when they get burnt out. They do just need a break from it entirely. I don't like that for myself, just because I know if I take a break, it can't be too long of a break. Otherwise, I won't get back into it, And there are times where, let's say I had even just like a week where I wasn't working on any videos or anything creative, and then just trying to get back into it even after that span of time can be difficult and can take me a while. That's why I usually try as much as I can to still be working on things, even if it is slower. But I can also understand if somebody does need to just take a break from it entirely.
Yeah.
I think just some people need that extra time.
Moving away from even outside of just building in Minecraft, like for me with my radio program and stuff, there is a very long week of time, or period of time for at least I think especially this past year, where I just had week after week where there was no new episode being released, just because of a mix of things, whether A, I was busy, or B, I just simply had nothing to put together for that episode. But in some of the cases, like I know early on when it first started, because I started the show in 2019, and I had an episode every week up until I think maybe in September of 2020 or August 2020, give or take. So that whole period of time, I was able to still put together weekly shows. But by that time, I think I forgot if I was running dry on content or if I was just getting really busy to the point where I couldn't actually do the show on a regular basis. But anyway, at some point there throughout all of that, I basically ended up coming to this point where, I have content and I want to put a show together, but I've been out of it for so long that I say, you know, I don't really feel like putting the show together because it's probably just going to be a half-produced effort, you know, not really my best work. And then so in those cases, on a week when I could have put an episode out, I still don't, because I kind of feel like I'm still feeling that, not really the burnt out sense, but I just kind of want to pull myself away from it for a bit because I just don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it kind of ties in.
Just slow down a bit.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, well...
I did used to, when I first started live streaming, I would try to live stream or set a schedule for myself, and I found that stressed me out more when I did that, because, well, it not necessarily stressed me out, but I wasn't always in the mood to do it at my scheduled time, and I didn't like that, because I'm like, I don't want to force myself to do something when I'm not in the mood to do it.
Oh yeah, I see.
So that's why I kind of did away with the whole scheduling thing. Now I still do have like a scheduled live stream every week still, but it's kind of different because that's a survival stream, and while I do tend to do some survival streams during the week now, I don't always. Like during the week it's my time to work on creative stuff, and then my weekends is like survival, so it's always switching things up a bit, so it's not like I'm doing the same thing all week. So that one I don't mind, but I can't do it for every single day, otherwise I don't think I would like that.
Oh yeah,
I like to have... Yeah.
I think the burnout would accelerate at that point. If you said you do it for a set time.
The less scheduled things I have, the better.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Me on the contrary, but then again, because I'm just starting out with streaming, that would make sense that I would at least schedule something. Well, only like the one, you know, you've noticed that I've been doing things weekly, right?
Once a week isn't bad, but if I were doing a scheduled stream, like every day of the week or even multiple times a week, I'm not always in the mood to stream, and I'm just going to stream whenever I want to most of the time. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That makes sense.
I think part of it might have to do with it being a weekday, and it's in the evening after coming home from work, so maybe I'm just more exhausted and I don't always feel like streaming. That could be part of it too.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I guess that it kind of just comes down to looking back at the original sort of term you mentioned, looking at this as trying to find motivation, because I guess we've kind of looked at this as when you're lacking motivation, but now trying to find it. So we said that stepping away for a bit, taking breaks is absolutely okay, and especially if you need to, if you think it works for you. Because I know, and as Meg has suggested, or at least in her case, it may not be the most effective, but it is something to consider. Are there any other ways?
Breaks take. Not as if you need like a shorter break versus a longer break. So people are different.
Yep.
But about motivation, right?
Yeah.
My first thought with how to stay motivated is half the time I feel like I'm not motivated to do anything until I'm mid halfway through it, or till I'm into it. Gotta get my brain kind of started up.
Yeah.
Because once I'm in the middle of a project, I'm thinking about it a lot, then I'm more motivated to continue working on it. But just getting that initial push to start working on it, that's the hardest part, I think.
I see. So because I guess it's almost like you kind of have to get into that flow before you can really, or it takes a little bit before you establish that flow, and then things will click in. You'll say, then everything starts coming to you all one after another in that. Or even, should we even rely on motivation overall? Or should we do it like how you said it, where it's like, just go by it if you want to finish it?
I think motivation comes after you start something, not before. I think a lot of times people wait around for the motivation to start something, when in reality, the motivation comes after you start it. The motivation to continue comes.
So I guess it'd be more of like, maybe not so much motivation if it was beforehand, but whether it's inspiration or sort of this drive, or maybe it is just a short-term emotion, then rather than true motivation that people might feel beforehand. I think in order
to start something, you need self-discipline, and then after the self-discipline comes the motivation.
Ah, I see. I have been going off mostly on, spur of the moment kinds of things, even if it's something where I'll wake up in the morning and I'll say, at some point today I'd like to get through this project, and I feel like I want to get through this project, and so only in those cases will I actually touch on a project. Whereas on a day where I feel like, maybe I shouldn't really do this, even though it might be something I really want to get out of the way because it's been, obviously these are not like time-bound things that are overdue, because obviously I do have to get those done, but like personal projects, then I'll say, I don't have like an actual set timeline or anything. I'll just not do it, and then I won't do it. So
yeah, I do go day by day and just work on whatever I feel up to doing any given day. But starting is difficult.
Yeah, and I guess that's where it is, where even on those days, then in my case, if we're talking self-discipline versus waiting on those spur of the moment times, I just probably would have to, even though I say maybe I don't feel like it, just get on it anyway, and just try to see, even if it, I guess, like in the sense of whether it's stream or even just sitting down, whether or not I am streaming, even if it means starting with a half an hour of flying around and doing nothing, and eventually starting looking around, or even just starting to start placing blocks down, and then maybe seeing where that goes. Like, I know your current project, which I probably won't name in case you want to leave it a surprise. You have been doing a lot of planning and building for that. I really wonder however in the world you've been able to keep well, I don't know if I should use motivated in this particular case, but if, whether or not, have there been times, let me rephrase this, have there been times when you've had, or when you haven't had ideas for what you're going to build, but you kind of were, whether it was in stream or you kind of felt like, I really want to get through this, but I don't know where I'm going to start on or where I'm going to continue this project on?
Well, that has happened when I was doing the Samson build.
Okay.
I feel like most of my builds, I usually have in mind like what I need to work on when I start a live stream. But sometimes it is like that, where I'm just like, I know I need to work on this, so I'm going to start the live stream, but I have no idea what I'm going to work on. And I just kind of figure it out. Now, when I'm live streaming though, that's like one of the ways I kind of force myself to get into a project, because now I'm like expected to do something. So that is one way that I can force myself to get started working on something, and then I'll find the motivation once I like get into it for a little bit, and once people start, joining in and chatting, I'm like, oh, okay, like this is fine, and then I usually find something to do. That is one of my many tricks of getting motivation for myself. I have to live stream it to help myself stay motivated.
Maybe the people will help you with discipline. No, not really disciplining, but just saying, hey, yeah, we've come to see you do something. Even though we may be chatting about trying to distract you.
You feel pressured that, oh, now I have to actually work on something because they're all watching me.
Yeah, and I guess that's where my downfall comes, in the sense of when I've told myself that, maybe streaming this might be the best way to get something done. But the problem is I don't know if maybe I could be thinking of it totally incorrectly, where I might just walk into that stream saying, okay, let's see what's going to happen. And I'm going to try to get through, work on like a specific aspect of that city project, for example, if I was streaming creative. But then I get there and I all of a sudden realize I actually don't have any ideas. There was nothing that I came into the stream thinking about. And now I have the pressure of having these people watching me. And now I kind of am like, well, what am I going to do? I can't stall for 1 or 2 hours flying around making it look like I'm doing something.
So are you saying you do start streaming without a plan at all? Or you usually do have a plan?
And that's where it comes down to where I'm not consistent, because there are some days when I know exactly what I'm going to do, whether it's I've got drawings to back me up, or things where we'll be like, I'd like to give this a try and experiment, and at least a few things that I know will take me some time. But there are other times when I'm like, I just want to chip away at this and force myself to try to finish some of these things before they go unnoticed for another, half a year or something like that. So I better go and try this. And those are the streams where I find myself getting stuck in the middle, going, I don't want to end this because it's just been, 45 minutes to an hour or something, and I've brought these people in just to see me doing nothing. And then especially the worst part is at the end of the stream, I'll go, wow, that really was a sort of a loss of time for me, just because I tried but didn't end up doing anything. Sure, I mean, there might have been great conversations had from that stream, but from a productivity standpoint, there really isn't much that I've done. Just because I guess I
typically don't even stream unless I do have like a specific thing in mind that I want to do.
Maybe in my case, it's just spoken to the schedule I've set, because I felt like sort of this urge, or not really the urge, but kind of like a sort of a soft obligation to find that one time in the week to be able to at least get to reach out to the community and say, here, I'm going to stream something up and let's chat. Let's have a little bit of fun for these next.
Now, I have felt that before, actually, where I would stream something with not really planning on what I was going to do. Because sometimes if I finish a project in survival, but then I have my scheduled weekly stream coming up and I don't know what to do, I'm like, what am I even going to do? And then I'm like kind of in the stream like, I don't really know what to do. And those streams typically end up being shorter just because I don't have as much in mind to do.
I see. So actually, yeah, I have noticed, and I figured that, yeah, okay, I guess either she has constrained for time, or there really is, like, it's still sort of all in planning phase. And that's when I know, like, whenever your streamers are trying to figure out, okay, so maybe this is the reason why. Or you found a great way to sort of, and maybe I should do this a bit more myself without sounding like I'm rambling, where you kind of verbalize your thought process. And at least kind of fill out the stream in that way. So while you're still thinking about it, people can kind of listen in onto what you're thinking about when you're mentioning things. All hums and ums aside, and that, but we still know that you're going through this planning phase, I guess, is something. I mean,
yeah,
I'm
always thinking out loud.
I probably do without even realizing it. Although sometimes the problem for me, though, and you've seen this, and even probably it's happening to us right now, is that I just ramble on to fill time for fear that there will be maybe it's just my radio mindset, where any period of just dead silence is not good. Objectively not good, quote unquote, but that might just be something that
but at least we're not this is pre-recorded though, so we're not doing this live.
That's true.
We can always cut any awkward gaps,
or we can leave any gaps in here in case,
or we could just leave the awkward gaps
if we want. If you're listening and you're sick of hearing us, then say, can you just leave us with like 5 seconds of silence? And
well, they could always just pause the podcast at that point.
No, actually, that's true. That's true. I forgot about that. I mean, well, never mind. Regardless of the medium, there's always a way to be able to set it. Even though okay, maybe you got me on that one. No, it's did you have anything that because I know you probably had some questions as well regarding this.
Not necessarily questions, but I did we need to go back on motivation in general, because
yes, for sure.
One of the questions that we had was, to what extent does passion play into motivation?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, well, I did say that motivation comes after the self-discipline part, but yeah, if you are trying to motivate yourself to do something you're not passionate about, or something that you just don't have any interest in, or maybe you think you have interest in it, but you try to do it and then you find out you just don't find the motivation to work on it. So maybe it's just not a passion for you, or maybe, it just doesn't interest you. Entirely. I usually have to, have an interest in it in order to be motivated to do it. If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that I tell myself I want to learn how to do, or I want to do. Like, oh yeah, I want to learn this and I want to learn this because I want to learn everything. But then as soon as I sit down to do it, I'm like, I hate this. I do not want to work on it. And maybe that's just a cue to somebody that maybe it's just not your thing. Maybe you just need to find the one thing that you can really get into and find that motivation to continue working on it.
Maybe this is why I never got into video creation myself. I'll say, because I've told myself, you've probably seen me doing things like starting to collect replay footage or something from clips in game, but it's just sitting there. Like I've told myself, I'm gonna try one of these days. Let's say if I'm lacking inspiration or any ideas for actual building, then I'll go review this footage and maybe put it together into a video or something, or even actually things like rendering. Oh my goodness. There are times when I'll just go, okay, I have these, I'd love to try to render these, but it just never comes. Not that I'm not passionate about them. I have an innate curiosity to be able to learn, so that's something that's
yeah, that's
stuck.
My thing too, I guess. There's a lot I want to know how to do, but it's hard to find motivation to do it all.
Yeah, or it's like things that are like, I want to get good at this or get better at this, so that maybe even if it's not now that I feel passionate about it, then maybe later as I get into it, then I might start to, find that passion in doing so. But or maybe it's just me trying to trick myself too much. I don't know. Maybe it really isn't that I wouldn't really have to get involved in all this video editing stuff. But yeah, it's just I've been wondering how exactly I would kind of tackle that, if it's something I should just pursue, if I should, like my building project, sit down on it, really sort of almost force myself to sit down and give it a try, or use that as like, a lack of passion or lack of passion as a warning sign that, okay, maybe I shouldn't go adventure into this and maybe just spend more time back on what I'm already doing, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. I did jot down this because I think it is something I don't normally think about, but maybe part of the reason why I'm not motivated to do new things outside of what I'm currently doing is probably just because of a learning curve. If it's something brand new that I don't know anything about and I want to learn it, like I have a hard time motivating myself to learn new things even though I want to. And I think a lot of it is because you have to start from the beginning, and I'm so used to having the knowledge I already do have that it's such a struggle to start from the beginning knowing nothing about something. And that's a huge demotivator for me whenever I want to work on something. And if I don't have much knowledge in it, then yeah, it demotivates me.
I see. Fear of the unknown wouldn't really play into that, would it? I mean, I imagine
no, not fear of the unknown. More like, well, this is how I was thinking about it. More like when you're younger and you're learning everything you're learning is brand new at the time. You don't have any skill set of any kind when you're younger. Everything is new. So you kind of just take that on like, oh yeah, you have to start there because you don't have any previous knowledge. But now that I'm older, like I have all of these certain skill sets. Let's say like I have all these art skills, but I want to learn all these other skills too. But I don't have the motivation to start them because it's like a conflict there because I've already have these skills I've established. Like, do I want to just use those? Since I already have them established, it's kind of easier just to go with what I already know, or do I really want to spend the time to learn something else?
Right, I see. Or to just adapt whatever you know, and maybe it might apply to some of the new things that you're trying to learn up as well. Okay, no, I see what you mean. But although I figure that maybe for some people, maybe to you listening, it is possible that it could also be just fear of, because there's so much that's out there with whatever it is if you're venturing into something
or just
new.
A fear of failure,
or a fear of failure. Yeah, that's also possible too. Where it's
that's
like,
another thing, because if you are skilled in one thing, maybe you are afraid to start something else for fear that you won't be any good at it.
Yeah, I guess, or like to face some reality that maybe this truly isn't something for you, or whatever the case is. I guess for me, I'm gonna have to find out with
which really you won't know unless you try it. You just gotta try it to find out.
That's very much so. At least to even if it comes back to self-disciplining myself to really sitting down and just focusing on it and giving it a try. That's also very possible. But yeah, I guess so. That kind of does come into just lacking motivation. Is there anything else that came to mind for you with lacking in anything that lacks motivation, or reasons why? Are there experiences or anything?
Anything that lacks motivation?
Or what I meant is reasons why you would lack motivation. That's what I meant. Or other demotivators. I think you put it that way too.
Okay, so the main one, I guess that was the main one. Just if it's something brand new and I would have to start from the beginning, that's a demotivator. Yeah, that's the main one that I can think of. And most of the time it's just laziness. Just not wanting to sit down and start a project. That's where the self-discipline comes in.
I actually quite like that because, yeah, motivation, I guess, basically, as we've sort of described it, is often associated as that spur of the moment kind of mood where you're just like, okay, I really feel motivated. I want to do this before getting it started, as you've put it. But
yeah, you can't, it's not going to happen that way. It's never going to happen that way.
And the thing is, it never stays. It's just a spur of the moment thing. If you're banking on that initial feeling before you actually start your project or whatever.
Kind of like daydreaming. Like you can daydream all you want about doing something, but until you actually sit down to do it, it's not really motivating you to do it. Yeah. Just thinking about it.
That's true. That's very true. And the funnier part is when you do get into it and you realize it actually doesn't take very long or was a lot easier than you think. And then you're sort of,
that, or you get so engrossed in it that several hours pass by and you're like, what? I've already spent this much time on this thing?
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. There you know that you've hit motivation and it has come to you in those cases. But it is crazy sometimes when those sort of creative bursts sort of just occur, and it's like, I really want to get through this. But then again,
I said, they usually don't happen until like I get myself started on it first. Like I have to start, and then the motivation comes.
I see.
To continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, finishing stuff helps me motivate me to do new stuff. Like, kind of like what I was saying earlier with the burnout and how I have to work on things slower. Like, I can feel really burnt out, like, oh, I don't want to work on this. But as soon as it's done, I feel like this huge relief and this huge sense of accomplishment, even if it was a project I was like dreading throughout the entire process. Like I would hate working on it, but as soon as it was done, I would be like, oh, I actually did a thing. Now I want to go do something else. I go start something else.
So it's like a weight lifted off your shoulder almost. That
yeah, and it kind of motivates me to start a new thing, which is kind of interesting.
Maybe I'll be flying in the air by the time all these city projects are done, just because there's so many loose ends I still have yet to finish. If I get them all done.
But do you ever feel that way when you finish, let's say, one building in your city? You're like, oh, look, I actually finished one. Now I got to start another one.
I will say, though, I have felt it more in things where it was imperative to finish projects, whether it was like for academic purposes in school, back in your elementary or high school days or even university, college, when you had something that just, this was an ongoing drag of a project, but you still had to get it done. And then eventually by the end of it all, once you're finished it, you present it, especially if there was a presentation, though those I would dread if it was a topic I was unfamiliar with. But anyways, that point aside, once that was done, then it's like whether it's somebody says, oh yeah, you're done with this now, you can breathe happy, just wait till the finals. Even if there were finals, I'd still be breathing happy because I'm going, this is completely done. Like, I'm just glad this is done. Now, in creative stuff, I don't think I actually have quite any building as of yet. Maybe one. Actually, there might be one example of one where I know it's completely like 100% done. Because I think the most complete buildings, if I don't include things that I imported from other places, might be maybe like 95%, just because of the interiors that still need being done.
Yeah, I guess that is a tricky thing with structure. I don't typically have to deal with that, but the interiors and exteriors might be something you're continually adding to. It's never going to be 100% done.
The thing is, maybe it's also just a level of complexity I'm trying to throw in there, because most structures I've seen, and now, this doesn't mean that a structure is going back to the quality episode of lower or higher quality, but it's just that most people are or some, whatever builds are out there, some are there without interiors and they're satisfied with it, which is perfectly fine. And it's like, you can call it done and it's perfectly fine.
Depends on what the purpose of the build is.
Exactly. And in my case, it could just be that, I maybe really am either overcomplicating it, or it's just really the nature of what I'm intending on doing. So it could also be that I've just set myself up for a really big task, being able to there's an expression I was thinking of in my mind, but it's not coming to me. It's like the terms are in my mind. They're all mixed up in my head, but I don't know how the actual expression goes. So let's just pretend that never occurred. But basically what it's like, where it's like, I'm just trying to, I can summarize it as being too ambitious. That's what it is. Like there's so many things I'd like to do. And I'm starting this city project, basically, if I think about it, with all of my goals and what I want to be able to get out of it. It's probably very ambitious, just because I haven't done anything of this particular scale before.
Do you have any particular end goals for that city, or is it?
I think
is it just going to be like just a project you just do whenever you have time?
I think in the long term, it's like in the entire life cycle of the project, it's just going to be an ongoing one. But locally, if I want to at least make it look like some kind of a city, like if I pick a particular region I want to focus on of that city, and that I could kind of call, like, once I basically look at it visually and it looks like it's visually all sort of all put together, and it doesn't look like a bunch of little districts here and there and just streets and clusters of buildings and then empty plots of land that are not supposed to be empty, but they're just the regular super flat land, things like that. So I guess there are little local objectives I have are small little goals here and there, but it is an ongoing project. I probably haven't thought far, and for all we know, it might just end up, being put aside if I decide to start up another city project, which I think at this point, it might be a while if I ever do. Because it's like sometimes I've looked at my old projects from before and I've said, whether it's an issue with the terrain or an issue with some of the buildings I've got there, and I'll say, these really look terrible. I should probably start again. Like those kinds of things are the cases where I might do up a new project and abandon the old one completely. But in this case, like I'm optimistic that it'll go for a little while. It's just,
I can't imagine though. You've been working on that for over, a year and a half?
It is about a year. I think this is almost now coming up to being tied with the last project. That I was working on until I found out that the scaling was absolutely terrible because it was in default generated terrain, and basically the whole downtown was supposed to be condensed into basically 4 blocks wide, 4 city blocks wide, which no city between 2 bodies of water is four like city blocks wide. They're usually much wider. There's much more room in them, so kind of feels more city like. That's kind of why I said I'm going to have to just try this on a flat piece of land. I'll go through the terraforming pains because it's an opportunity to practice that. But yeah, it's like, see, all these things, all these ideas and things I've wanted to throw into the city, it's just being able to, whether it's through planning or sequencing or just maybe because I've been relying too much on those spur of the moment moods or the emotions that I would have thought were motivation up until today. So, it's like, it's that sort of thing. So I guess wherever that whole long tangent on city building for me came from, I really don't know where, but it really just, I guess to me, like this, I think if anything has been more of a learning experience for my case, because I really, it was, I let me tell you, I think very deeply went through this creative slump. It was a few weeks ago, kind of just around the turn of the new year is when I think I was at my lowest for a lot of this stuff.
Well, actually, all through January, I was pretty burnt out. Like, I mean, I haven't been producing content as frequently on my channel, but I've kind of just learned to live with that. Like, if I don't have content ready, it'll be fine. But I still work on content consistently. It's just much slower if I'm really not feeling up to it.
So then I guess it just, maybe I just have to, find comfort in that too, where it's
just kind of regulate yourself.
Yeah. Or it's like, I don't have to be obliged to, although I'd want to try to get through and actually finish parts of this, of whatever project it is I'm doing.
Now, however, if I do it for too long, then I start to feel like, okay, I'm wasting too much time and I need to get working.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that's the thing where it's sometimes that time may never come because I've just been so out of it that I don't know when I have to step back in. So it probably just comes down to, again, maybe I just have to remind myself constantly that, okay, this is one of my own projects. It is not time bound for me. So there's no particular pressure to have to go and get it done. Now, obviously, I'd want to get it done because if I don't get it done, then it just, you're gonna see it's like that. The finish line just keeps moving back every time you inch closer and closer to it. It's like one of those sorts of things. And so eventually, I will have to get it done, but I just have to really regulate myself and sit down.
I will say that. Yeah, I will say that with having YouTube and an audience, I guess, out there, it does put a little bit of pressure on me, or it does help me stay motivated a little bit more because I know that I'm doing it, so other people can enjoy it, or I know I'm making this thing for other people. So that does kind of put pressure on me. Also, more time-sensitive things, like right now, I'm in the middle of trying to do an organics video series, but it's got several parts to it, and knowing that I don't upload more than one video a week, it would take a minimum of like 5 weeks to get this whole series out. It's going to take longer than that, but that does kind of put pressure on me, like I don't want to spend like the next 3 months just doing this series. Like I want to get them out sooner if I can.
Oh yeah.
So that does motivate me a little bit more to get some things done, just having that.
maybe I just need to be more time bound, or find stuff to apply pressure to me.
Not so much though. Not so much where you're like have a a deadline, but you have an end. I have an end goal in mind of what this is for.
Yeah, so. like having some sense of completion, I think, is what I was after, rather than simply saying, "Oh yes, this building is due by March 7." I just threw a random date there. There's nothing specific. Maybe if you might be thinking, if you're listening to this, that there will be something out March 7. What day even is March 7?
What is March 7? It's a Monday.
It's a month. Okay, well, I guess there's nothing much to think about on March 7, but it's you make whatever you want out of it. But yeah, like again, it really to me is I think after all these things that especially that you've brought up, Meg, to me is really a learning experience. I think because it helps me to reflect on what I went through earlier this year and kind of how I can take it moving forward, and if it might help to improve on just my whole tackling of all the projects anyways, and that sort of thing.
And hopefully it helps other people who are
most especially and I should remind myself of that too, because not only are we speaking from our experiences, but we also do want to relay this to you listening, in case you may have had similar experiences, or you might be running into those. You're seeing red flags popping up, thinking like, what am I supposed to do? Am I getting into burnout? Am I losing motivation? Am I even feeling motivation now that we've determined that only happens once you start really working at something? So just getting into that flow. But I mean, as always, the feedback lines are open. We'd always love to hear from you as well. If you're comfortable and would love to share your story about it,
on YouTube, right?
On YouTube, yes. Or we've had some people, for instance, like this motivation topic was actually brought by request. So and it happened. It was funny, the timing of it all, because we actually had it planned as something we were going to do, but I guess the message came expertly. It was expertly timed, I think. So we were able to address that. Hopefully it was timely for you if you were looking for something about motivation specifically.
Oh man, we're not very timely with our podcast recording, are we?
Well,
we're not so motivated all the time to work on it.
Maybe it's on the release as well as the recording, because I know that the time.
That's true. We do record like a little bit in advance of the release.
Yeah,
so.
And it really is it's all penchant on me. Well, sure. Maybe I'll say that I do. Work on the post processing and putting it all together, but no, point aside is that you can always drop a line on our YouTube in case you're coming from the podcasting side, or as people have messaged, our socials are also linked up there, so if you want to flag us down that way, or talk to us. I have to think of a better something with a better connotation, because flagging us down sounds like there's a problem.
Messaging us, just
messaging. See, I'm thinking of the wrong expressions already. But yeah, messaging us and just reaching out, because we'd absolutely love to hear from you. For instance, like we found out that word I think we were looking for a couple episodes ago, thanks to you providing feedback. So that was quite nice.
Feedback is really appreciated.
Absolutely. But yeah, thanks for listening. I guess we'll catch you on the next episode whenever we end up releasing that.